Reviving a much-loved series could be a gamble. Stick too close to the original, and the project could feel like a retread. On the other hand, reinventing it completely can alienate stalwart supporters. Over a decade after the last chapter of Square Enix's Norse-themed JRPG series, Valkyrie Elysium departs from its predecessor's turn-based roots in favor of a new action-heavy hack-and-slash direction. In that transition, Elysium has established a fun and flashy combat system, but sacrifices part of what made the original PlayStation game memorable, a focus on its characters and world building.
Become my tool of intervention and save this world from doom.
It shall be done as you wish, All-Father.
In many ways, Valkyrie Elysium feels like a Square Enix take on Falcom's Ys RPG series, rather than a return to Valkyrie Profile's original late 90s DNA. And in the way that modern Ys feels somewhat like a throwback to the PS3 era of games in terms of the structure of their worlds, combat, and progression, so too does Valkyrie Elysium. Although I'm largely satisfied with the action it serves up, Elysium is far less successful at establishing an intriguing world for it to take place in. We join the obedient and straight-laced warrior deity known as Valkyrie as she meets with her creator, the All-Father Odin. Their base of operation is the opulent yet sparse Asgard, which looks nice, but it lacks anything to do. That's also true for the regions of Midgard, where Odin sends you on missions, except for the part about looking nice. While they're more expansive than the godly domain, the locations you visit are vacant, and offer little more than a determined line to walk along as you fight, with little else of interest. That's not to say there aren't plenty of crates to smash for gems, or treasure chests full of valuable loot, or minuscule lore drops along the way, but I was craving more meaningful branching paths to explore and sights to seek out. Despite the regions of Midgard being rather small and linear, there are only a handful of areas to explore in Valkyrie Elysium. The world lacks life, which makes sense with its impending doom, but it often feels empty to its detriment rather than a successful atmospheric choice. What saves it is that each well-trodden part of Midgard is reused in great side quests that warrant the return. These optional adventures offer challenging and fun combat scenarios, reward you with meaningful upgrades and items, and are a better use of time than scouring the usually barren environments for the odd treasure chest.
I exist to purge evil in the land.
Though the setup for Valkyrie Elysium deals with a war between gods and mythical figures like Odin, Fenrir, Valkyries, and a looming world-ending Ragnarok, its story falters from the start. The main plot is slow to unfold, with Valkyrie and Odin being the only real characters present in the opening hours. It takes about half of the 20-hour campaign before it starts to crawl towards Valkyrie's character development and for the central conflict to come into sight. Even when larger reveals play out in the climax, the impact of the plot is dampened by its overall predictability, and the moments that should be eye-opening and emotional simply aren't earned. Your squad of Inheriar warrior spirits does eventually add much-needed levity, personality, and exposition with their companionship and support to the Battle Maiden, but much of it is for naught in the grand scheme of the story. The last few chapters focus on the humanity and independence Valkyrie is absorbed from being around her Inheriar, but when the crux of the finale comes down to a choice, it's frustrating that a predetermined outcome plays out based not on your decision, but on whether certain optional items were collected. That's not really a choice, is it? While I found the exploration and storytelling to be underwhelming, the driving force and the saving grace of Valkyrie Elysium is its combat. Valkyrie is formidable, and while controlling her is simple, she has plenty of moves and combos to explore. Once it gets going, that is. Like the plot, the ramp up to unlocking your full set of powers and abilities is dreadfully slow. Your light and heavy melee attacks are accompanied by a guard and a dodge, which are par for the course when it comes to action games, and they work well enough here, but like a piece of gum you chewed too long, ran out of flavor while I waited for new ideas to be introduced. What eventually spices up combat are the swappable pool of spells called Divine Arts, which provide a variety of elemental, ranged, and utility spells, as well as a nifty grapple maneuver called the Soul Chain. I love the mobility this thing provides. It lets you zip to an enemy and start laying in a combo before Valkyrie even touches the ground. Most regions you travel to will introduce a new reluctant Inheriar spirit to join your crusade. These warriors like Egon and Cypher helped me to care more about the overall story arc and the lands these spirits once lived in. Their banter, anecdotes, and opinions on the mission at hand often bring lightness and warmth to what is mostly a sterile tale. The Inheriar provide a much-needed human outlook on the unfolding events and helped soften Valkyrie's narrow-minded outlook on the world and expand her horizons. In battle, you can summon them to fight alongside you and grant you elemental attacks, making them essential in certain enemy matchups who are weak to certain elements. Being able to call an Einherjar backup makes crowded fights much more manageable, and it's fun to decide which friend to phone to make swift work out of enemy hordes that would otherwise be a slog to take out with Valkyrie alone. However, because there are only a handful of Einherjar to call upon, you also have to use divine arts to deal loads of damage on your own. These powerful spells look great as they exploit enemy weaknesses and potentially stun them. There's a gauge that restricts their use, but it's refilled quickly enough that arts are readily available as reliable combat tools that add a much needed visual flourish to liven up the bland and empty areas when skirmishes arise. I often lose myself in the enjoyable tension of alternating between my Einherjar and divine arts, and building their resources back up to continue the onslaught. It's an effective distraction from the dull world and slow story, though battles are far from exempt from issues. Many times, I've had to fight the camera while in close quarters with enemies because it catches on walls when you get too close, like this. It becomes nearly impossible to tell what's going on around you, or whether you're even hitting the enemy you've comboed into the corner. Likewise, the targeting reticle is a struggle to aim to fire off divine arts or soul chains in the intended direction. Several settings exist to tweak the desired camera distance or lock-on preference, but I never found a good solution that left me feeling I was in full control. While Valkyrie Elysium is certainly not the next coming of the beloved PlayStation JRPG Valkyrie Profile, there are parts that shine. Sure, it's not a visual powerhouse, and it suffers from occasionally aggravating camera issues, and the tale it weaves doesn't leave you much with your friends to discuss and dissect. But Elysium's new take on combat does eventually grow into something fun and satisfying to play, and that's enough to carry it through, but not enough to stand out. For more JRPG action, check out our reviews of the Diofield Chronicle and Soul Hackers 2, and for everything else, stick with IGN.